Welcome to the SBR NHL Double Play of the Day video for Thursday, February 6th. I'm Ian Cameron with Adam Booth as we deliver our plays of the day for this Thursday NHL card. Before we get into it, a reminder that if you want to take a look at all the daily NHL written content from a betting perspective, and it's great content, Adam contributes to that, Jimmy Murphy and others talking and writing about the NHL on a daily basis. Great information. Go to sbrvideo.com/NHL to check that out. And make sure you're paying attention to some of the great written work being done regarding NHL hockey on a daily basis at sportsbookreview.com. That's sbrvideo.com/NHL. Let's see if we can get a play of the day winner from both of us on the board on this Thursday. Start with Adam and his play of the day as he goes to the Nashville Calgary game. We've got Calgary minus 115, home favorites, total 6.5, shaded to the under, courtesy of SBRodds.com. Make sure you're using SBRodds.com daily to get the best line and price with all of your plays. I certainly am in full agreement with this. I lost with Calgary, unfortunately, on the puck line in their last game against San Jose. And I realized quickly in that game, I thought Calgary would avoid the Battle of Alberta hangover simply because they got blasted so badly by Edmonton on Saturday night that, such a bad loss that they would be really fired up, chomping at the bit to bounce back the next time out against the Sharks, a Sharks team who had been absolutely floundering, scuffling, and struggling mightily in recent games. They had won a game following the All-Star break prior to that win against Calgary, but not a great performance, like you could say, from Calgary. They lose 3-1. Let's give Aaron Dell credit. Aaron Dell was actually pretty solid in net for the Sharks in leading them to that victory the other night. Of course, the biggest concern for the Calgary Flames is the long-term health of their best defenseman, Mark Giordano. Obviously left the game against San Jose with a hamstring injury. He's already been ruled out for this game tonight against Nashville. However, I've said this methodology and thought process in a lot of different sports where that first game, without a key cog and a key member of the team, it's a collective step-up effort, usually from that team. You see it in the NBA especially. You see it in college basketball oftentimes. Best player or one of the best players, most important players gets injured. Everybody steps up that first game and they all play well, and they oftentimes win in that spot. And second of all, for Calgary, I do expect them to be a lot better tonight after back-to-back losses. At Nashville, I'm still not fully trusting of this team. They're up, they're down, they're all around. They win one, they lose one, they win one, they're losing. That's actually been their pattern lately. They win one, they lose one. They've been up and down, alternating wins and losses, and they're off a win, actually, against Winnipeg the other night, which means that they could be due for another loss in this pattern where they've been going back and forth between wins and losses. So bottom line is, Adam, I agree. Tell us why you like Calgary here tonight.
Oh, well, you laid it out. It's just the alternating wins losses. I expect that to carry on the rest of the season, and ride that. That's my new approach. It's the alternate WL system, we'll call it. No, you touched on the biggest storyline coming in, which is Mark Giordano being out. The fact he's a previous Norris Trophy winner tells you what he means to this club. That value can't be understated. But you also mentioned a good point about sometimes we also see teams play a little bit better when a key player is out. And it's not because they're better without that player. It's because there's an awareness that they have to be better, and it's noise. I mean, there's no. I'd have no data to back up that being like a long-term profitable approach, but you do get an improved line with that player out, and so definitely agree with what you said there, Ian. And in the article today, I just touched on the fact that these two teams are they have just had mediocre seasons so far. They haven't reached the expectations that they set out for themselves or the fans did. Heard from a guy on Twitter this week that the fans in Nashville were booing them after that performance against Vegas. I mean, that opening period was terrible. I mean, you're a team in the midst of a race. You're bottom of the Central. I mean, they've made up some points, I guess, since the All-Star break a little bit. They've moved ahead of Minnesota. I think they're a couple points behind Chicago or tied with Chicago now. Calgary is one of those teams as well. I mean, this is what happens every time this year. There's, 10 teams all in that mix of we're going to be on the bubble or outside the bubble. And so every single game between these division and Western or conference rivals matters. And so really you don't say one team is more motivated than the other. They're both coming into it knowing they need 2 points. And yeah, they picked up the win in Winnipeg the other day. I think, 2-1 overtime win. And it's one of those, they could have won it, they could have lost it. They did get the win, but I'm not reading into the fact that they dominated the Jets by any means. The numbers are very close. And the Flames, on the other hand, bad performance against the Oilers. Fair enough. The Oilers were probably due for one. They lost, 3 straight to the Flames. But then you followed up against the Sharks team, missing their top goalie with their backup, beleaguered, having their own struggles, pretty much out of the race already. And you put 1 goal on the board. And that's been a thing with Calgary this year. Their goal scoring has not helped them out of nearly as many games. In past seasons, we saw them, the Flames magic in the third period where they were able to rally and come back from 2 or 3 goals down. They're not being able to do that again this year, which is kind of amazing considering goal scoring is up. So you say if they can't get the offensive production to get 3 every night, can they keep the opponents off the scoreboard? And, Riddick, Talbot, they're okay goalies. Riddick is the better, but he's not, a Price or Vasilevsky, and he's not going to steal the show enough times. So you have to play better in front of him. And I keep hammering on this point. It's the play in front, blocking shots, making sure every guy is back checking to pick up the loose man. That's how teams get exposed. So I'm on the Flames today. I have them at 55% to win, giving value to the line. I agree with the price on the board as far as just, my eye test saying, it should be rather close to a pick'em line. It's been between that -105, -115 kind of all day. But I guess the argument here is that the Predators have just been sloppy on their own back end. They have leaked goals pretty frequently. They do have performances like we've seen. They had a 1-0 shutout against the Jets earlier in January, and they followed up with 1 goal against the other night. And so we do see there's these performances where they're able to play better in their own zone. And, they've got a Norris candidate on their own side of the ice in Yossi, who's just had a phenomenal season. He's kind of doing as much as he can for this team. But I'm not going to make an argument for saying that this is a Calgary, huge Calgary value. It is value, but it's also a tricky spot given the inconsistencies that we've seen. So, but yeah, I mean, we've kind of been on a little bit of a slide over the last week. I had the Arizona over the other night. They shut out the Oilers, which I think the Oilers haven't been shut out for 8 weeks or something like that. And then you had the Devils, and I was on the Devils as well, and they're up 3-0. You're thinking, what a straightforward play. And then they show the Devils from, the first couple weeks of October, and they let a 3-goal lead slide with an overtime loss. So, things will start to turn out. This is a part of the season where it goes through peaks and valleys, and we're due to start turning up, I think, again here.
Yeah, I'm having a good season overall, plus units in that. But you're right, the play of the day, it's been up and down, and now we're in a little bit of a downturn right now. It's just the way it is. So we just keep going. You don't look back. You never think of the frustrations of past losses and past bets. You think of what you're going to do next, because if the energy and the focus isn't there, you're not going to do well. Okay, period, end of story. You've got to keep your eyes moving forward and looking ahead, not looking back, regardless of what kind of form you're in. So it's a great piece of advice right there for everybody that's involved betting on sports really on a daily basis. So Adam liking Calgary, a -115 against Nashville. My play comes from the Vancouver, Minnesota game. We've got Minnesota -130, home favorites, total 6, shaded to the under. We've got the plus price on the better hockey team. It's not just that simple, but that's where I'll start saying why I like Vancouver. We've got them in a plus spot, in my opinion, coming off a 4-0 shutout loss to the Boston Bruins. And I always am interested to know, what are teams like when they get shut out? What are they like that next game? How do they perform? Well, for the Vancouver Canucks, 3 previous shutout losses this season. Prior to the Boston game the other night, they bounced back to win the next game each of the 3 times after the shutout loss. So 3-0 off a shutout loss this season, Vancouver. And they played much better in most of those games. They lost 3-0 to Calgary in October. Next game against LA, they won 8-2. They lost 1-0 to New Jersey. Next game, they beat the Rangers 3-2. And in their third instance after a shutout loss, it was against Winnipeg. They lost 4-0. Back home against Arizona, they won 3-1. So this has been a very, very good bounce-back team off getting shut out. And it's a product of them being a pretty good offensive team. You know, with Elias Pettersson's had a phenomenal season. Brock Besser, Bo Horvat and company. They've been able to score goals a ton lately. Cooled off by the Boston Bruins, but how much are you going to really say, what happened to Vancouver? What happened to them? Bad job by the Canucks when you see what the Bruins have done coming out of the All-Star break. It's been a freight train for Boston after the All-Star break. They've allowed 3 goals in 4 games since the All-Star break. They gave up 1 to Winnipeg, 1 to Minnesota, shut out Vancouver, and then just the 1 goal allowed in the overtime win against Chicago last night. So that Bruins team is getting it done right now. There's no shame in the Canucks losing that game. It's a good bounce-back spot. Just last month, they proved they could go into Minnesota, beat this Wild team. They did that. They won 4-1 in Minnesota last month. I think it's a good bounce-back situation. Minnesota's off a win against Chicago, 3-2 in overtime. They hung on for the victory in that game, but still I'm not enamored with what I'm seeing from this team on a night-in, night-out basis. I worry about Dubnyk and Stalock, whoever they put in net on a nightly basis. Offensively, it's been a little bit spotty of late for the Wild, and to me, they're just a team that there's just too many teams ahead of them. There's too many points that they need to make up to realistically think they could get back into the Western Conference playoff race. Vancouver with that very solid track record, as I mentioned, when they were shut out in their previous game. They've matched up well with Minnesota. And this is a big game on the road trip. This is the 5th and final game of the road trip. Sometimes that can be a bet against spot, but it's more of a bet against spot when the team's been rolling through the road trip. They're like 4-1 or 4-0 in this spot. They've already guaranteed themselves a winning road trip. And sometimes that last game before they go back home, they kind of mail it in and there's a little bit of a clunker. I don't think you're going to get that. And the quotes I'm reading don't lend to the fact that Vancouver's just going to mail this one in tonight. They're 2-2 on the road trip so far. They're off 2 straight losses against Carolina and Boston. Carolina, they lost in a shootout. Boston, they get shut out. 2 pretty good teams. I don't think that's the same case with Minnesota. And the way they're talking about trying to finish this trip strong, get a plus 500 record on this road trip before going home for that game against Calgary on Saturday. And again, there's teams nipping at their heels in that Pacific Division. They're first for now, but Edmonton's right on their trail. Calgary's right on their trail. Vegas is right on their trail.
You can't take a night off.
No way.
You'll move 3 spots in the standings, if you lose 1 or 2 in a row at this point. That's how close it is.
So I think the better team, and I think Vancouver is the better of these 2 teams. They're bringing it tonight. I think they're focused off 2 straight losses, including a shutout loss. They've thrived in games following a shutout loss this season. They're the better of these 2 teams. They're getting a plus price. Sign me up. Play of the day, Vancouver, plus 114.
Well, I'm on the other side of you tonight, Ian, on this one. But I do agree that the Vancouver Canucks, coming out of the break, have been the better team. The Wild, so I did watch quite a bit of that Boston game with them. Man, that was a game where they were just so undisciplined. Not like, I think it was 1-0 for Boston. Minnesota came out all right kind of early on, and then they started getting into penalty trouble, and Boston just has such a good power play. And then they tilted. We talk about this sometimes in tennis and in esports quite a bit, where you can just tell that the emotions of the player, the team, have just got into their heads, and they're not playing disciplined or on point. They're not focused on the game. They're focused on, the bad calls against them, or, I mean, the penalty on Stahl was ridiculous. And then they followed it up with a win against the Blackhawks in overtime, which, it was, I actually thought they were the better team. I thought Chicago was a bit flat. I thought it was a better performance, but I do agree. I think the Canucks are the better team. I have the Wild at 55% today, though, so I am on them for that. But they've been shaky on the back end. Vancouver's defense and goaltending has been more consistent. Their goal scoring has been more consistent. Minnie's been good at home, though. I don't know. It's a spot where I can see the arguments for both sides. I'm on the other side, but I do, again, like the reasons you laid out for it.
Minnesota has been better at home. There's no question. They squeaked past Chicago. That was actually pretty good. They actually did play better in that game. I think they felt embarrassed the way they played against Boston.
Oh yeah, it was bad. And Bruce Boudreau, it's bad when Bruce is starting to look like a tomato, and you can tell it. He
gets that beat red face. Yeah, it looks like his face is going to blow up,
boiling over, and
exploding.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like that beat red face. Like red face is red as a freaking cherry, and there he is, just about to blow up on the bench there or something. He's had to do. It's always happens when he's angry. You see him yelling at players or yelling at the ref, and his face will just turn completely red, he's just like bright red.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny.
It's hilarious. It's always good. I'll miss him when he ultimately gets, unfortunately, fired at the end of the season, which I think is we'll miss him. He might end up getting another crack at it because it's been with Boudreau. Washington, and then Anaheim gave him a chance, and then Minnesota did. So he might not be done. If he wants to coach, there may be an opening for him if indeed he parts ways with the Wild at the end of the season. All right, so to recap, Adam has Calgary -115 against Nashville. For me, Vancouver +114 against Minnesota. See if we can get a 2-0 bounce back Thursday for the play of the day. Let's hope, hopefully we can get that done. All right, that's it. We're back Saturday, 10:15 a.m. Eastern time for the next edition of the SBR Double Play of the Day video. Again, sbrvideo.com/NHL for all the daily written content on the National Hockey League at sportsbookreview.com. For Adam Booth, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Thursday night. Good luck with all of your wagers, and we'll see you again right here on Saturday for the next edition of the SBR Double Play of the Day video.